What's up, guys? Roland here. This time on 3D NerdStop, we're going to go over how to clean a clogged nozzle and replace it if you need to. Alright guys, here we are. We're at the printer. Now, there's a couple different types of having a clogged nozzle. You can have one that's completely clogged. And if it's completely clogged, you can't get any plastic to come out of it. And you can also have a partially clogged nozzle. Right now I have a partially clogged nozzle. And the way you can tell that it's partially clogged is that when you start feeding material out of it, see how it curls up instead of just feeding a straight line down? Well, that means it's partially clogged because the filament should come straight out of it. And it doesn't. So that tells me that this is partially clogged. So the way we're going to fix that is there's a couple different ways you can do it depending on what you have around or what you own. One way you can do it, or you can try and do it, is you can get one of these. This is I have a 0.4 millimeter head in there, so this is a 0.4 millimeter drill bit. Okay, so that I can stick up in there. I'll put a link to this down in the description below. This is really small. So what you do is clean the plastic away from the end of it here. And you take this and find the hole. And you just stick it up in there a couple times. And then with it in there, you pull the plastic out. Okay, and that'll help clear the nozzle. Now sometimes that works, and sometimes it does not. Okay, so there are other ways to do it. You can try that. That's usually a fairly simple way to do it and a really quick way to do it. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to do that. Another way you can do it is while you want to heat up your hot end. Hotter than it's supposed to be. So we'll come in here and go to controls, temperature, nozzle, and we're going to heat this up to about 240 degrees. So we'll let that heat up real quick. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to use a cleaning filament. This is a cleaning filament. This is eSUN cleaning filament. And the way this stuff works is you feed it in, and then you feed so much out to let it help push the filament out, and then you let the hot end cool down, and then you pull it out to help yank stuff out the top of it. Because this stuff is so slick, it's not supposed to adhere itself to the side of the nozzle. Now you don't want to completely let the nozzle cool off. You only want to let it cool down to about 100 to 90 C, and that's when you want to pull it out. But we'll do that real quick to this nozzle. As you can see, as it's getting hotter, it keeps spitting out anything left over in it. And we're just about there. So we'll take this, put it up here, and get her loaded. And I've got about 400 millimeters worth of the material here. So we're just going to start feeding some of this down here until it cleans out. You can see now it's feeding out a good bit. Okay, so we fed out a good bit of it. So now what we'll do is we'll turn the printer off and we'll start letting the hot end cool down. And once it cools down to 90, or right about 100 to 90, we'll pull the filament out. Now sometimes it's not easy to get out. Sometimes you have to use like a pair of needle nose pliers or something to pull the filament out because it's a little tough to get out. So we'll lower the head down here just a little bit so y'all can see me pull it out. There we go. And then we'll just wait till it cools down to about 100 C to 90 C. So that'll take just a minute for it to do that. Alright, so we just got down to 100 C and it's still dropping. So what we do now is you're going to, of course, pull back on the handle so it lets the wheel come free, and you're just going to grip it and yank it out. And see what that does, This might be a little hard to see, but if you can see that, as you can see, it pulled out, and you can see that it left even the piece that was in the very end of the hot end sticking out there. Okay, so what you do now is you cut that off. You want to cut off all the material you yanked on. So as you can see, I'm going to cut a good portion off. Okay, then I'm going to reheat the hot end. I'm going to take it all the way back up to about 240, 250. Heat it up to 250 this time. Yeah, because it says you can heat this plastic all the way up to 280. So we'll actually go up to 260 on it this time. I didn't go 260 the first time because I had PLA in the hot end. If I'd had ABS, I probably would have. But I only had PLA in it. Okay, so we're reheating the hot end, so that'll take just a minute. So once it jumps back up to 260, we'll come back. Alright, now we're back up to about 260. So I've moved the head back up so y'all can see it come out the bottom. So we will reload our filament.
Oops. Gotta get it in there, right? There we go.
Just keep feeding it down. There we go. Now you can see it's coming out. Get our tweezers here. And we're actually going to let the motor extrude some for us here. So move axis, 1mm extruder, and let's let it spit out about 20 millimeters or so. Okay, so that's 20 millimeters. So we're going to turn it off again. Now we're going to let it cool back down. Alright guys, we're almost cooled back down. Now this time I'm actually going to let it hit 190. I'm going to let it hit 90 before I pull it. So 93, 92, 90, come on 90. And there we go. And then we'll pull it. I'm not seeing a bunch on the end. It's looking pretty good. We'll do it one more time. And then we'll load some more filament in it. Alright, so I'm going to heat the hot end back up one more time and do it one more time. When I get done with that, I'll come back to y'all and we'll load some filament up and see if it cleaned it. Alright guys, there we go. So I cleaned it out a couple more times. I actually did it 2 more times. So hopefully it's good and clean now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to load this up with the filament that I'm going to use for my next project I'm doing. So I'll take this and do like I always do. And here's our filament. Now I did learn one trick loading filament that I don't know if y'all have found yet or not. I know a lot of the times when I first started loading filament, you grab this lever here and you pull it back and then you fish the filament down in there and you try and find the hole, and sometimes it's real easy to do, sometimes it's not. Well, I found that if you take it and stick it in the top here and put a little bit of down pressure on it and then spin the gear, it'll grab it and pull it in for you, and then it'll feed it all the way down and out for you. There we go. And let's raise this up so we can see how it's coming out. Okay, so now we're going to come down here. I'm going to tell the extruder to extrude about 50 or 60 millimeters. Now sometimes it does take it a second to get going. And it's still curling a little bit, and I'm wondering if the end of my nozzle's been damaged by a couple of the filaments I've been experimenting with. You can see it's still curling up at the end. It's not coming straight out. And what that does is it doesn't let it feed straight down to the build plate. So, see how it's still curling up here around the end? So that tells me there's still something wrong with this nozzle. This nozzle is still not getting clean. For some reason, there's still something stuck in it. Now that's a little better. It's still got a curl in it. Yeah, it's still not feeding properly. Well, we can remove the nozzle and try and clean it from there. I would do that off camera. The PLA, it's really hard to clean out the inside of a nozzle other than using cleaning filament. I was hoping the cleaning filament would fix my problem. So I'm going to have to pop this nozzle off and see why it's not, see what's wrong with it, see what's clogging it up. So of course, when you go to pull a nozzle, you want to do it with no filament in it. So you would wind this up, take that out. We will get back to this filament. And I guess I'm going to pull my nozzle now. So let's pull it and see if we can't determine why it's still clogged, why it's still got a partial clog to it. Alright guys, so we're going to remove the hot end. Actually, we're going to remove the nozzle. I'm not going to remove the hot end. So, first thing we do is we have to heat it up. So I've got it heated up to 220 right now. The second thing you want to do, because we're messing with something that's 220C, which I'm not sure the exact calculation, but I believe that puts it over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, or pretty close to it, is safety gloves. So if you accidentally touch it, it won't hurt. Now this is a little tricky to do because, well, it's a little tight inside the machine. So we're going to move it up just a little bit higher so I can get at it hopefully a little easier here. Okay, so we moved it up high enough so I can get my hands in here and fiddle around with it. The first thing I do is I put something on the build plate that's padded to keep the build plate protected, because the build plate is glass. And well, the last thing you want to do is drop a tool on it and break your build plate, because then you're out of commission until you can get a replacement build plate. Okay? So usually, so I have a ratchet. Now the hot ends I use are 7mm. And I've got myself a little pair of pliers here. And hopefully these aren't too big and rolly. It's about right. There we go. So what I want to do is reach up here and grab a hold of the hot end with the pliers, and then stick this on the nozzle, squeeze with the pliers until the hot end comes free. Now you want to work quickly, because of course it's going to heat up the tools as you're doing this. Once the hot end comes free, then you can turn the machine off and give everything a minute to cool down. Alright guys, well here's a close-up image of the inside of the nozzle. Now, the one on the left is the one that was in the machine, and the one on the right is a brand new nozzle. Now, this may look like it's clogged, but that was the filament I just put in it and just ran through it, because you got to remember, I didn't do a cleaning after I put that filament in. I just took that nozzle out. And of course, when we look at the tip, here, and I know this is a little bit of a fuzzy photo, I'm sorry, it's the best one I got at the time, but as you can see, the one on the left, the nozzle is kind of flattened, where the one on the right, which is the new nozzle, comes to a nice point. I know it's difficult and hard to see in this photo, but that's the way it is. The nozzle's actually been damaged, and what it is over time, because this is a plated nozzle, this is a brass plated nozzle, is over time, from smashing into the build plate, it's just smashed the tip down. I mean, it's probably hit that build plate a couple hundred times, if not 1,000 times, you know, when it does the auto leveling on mine. it smashes itself into the build plate 9 times just to do the auto leveling, so it's 10 when it does its Z-axis. So it's a total of, 10 smashes every single print I do into the build plate. So over time, that just damages the tip. So of course, since this is brass and it's plated brass, it's just smushed the tip in, and that's what's caused the problem I was having. It's not that the nozzle was clogged, the nozzle was damaged. So as you can see, the one on the right is a brand new one, so that's what we're going to have to do, is swap out the nozzle here. Alright, so let's do that. Let's swap out the nozzle. So let's see if we can't get this nozzle installed now. Gloves back on. And yes, I know there are some people that are willing to grab a hold of that nozzle and try and stick it up there with their bare fingers. I've done it myself before. But I really prefer not to if I can get away with it. Sometimes I can get this to work and sometimes I can't, and I have to go to bare fingers. I really don't like going to bare fingers unless I have to. Because with the bare fingers, it gets real easy, really quick to burn yourself doing this. There we go. Got it that time. See, I can use 2 fingers real quick and twist it up until it gets to about there. So you see I got it most of the way up. Now check my ratchet. Nope, still in loosen mode. So take this, and now we're tightening. Take our pliers, get them back up in here, and get a hold of the hot end carefully so we don't break anything. And just snug it up. That's all you gotta do is snug it up. And there we go. The hot end is now reinstalled, or the nozzle's now. We have a new nozzle installed. So okay, well, I showed you a couple different ways to clean out the nozzle, which usually has worked for me. Usually when I've gotten it clogged, I've been able to use that cleaning filament and it cleans it right out. About 2 or 3 pulls, does a beautiful job. There are a lot of people that will clean their nozzle after every filament change. I don't. I'll clean it about every 4 or 5 filament changes. I'll run a small amount in there and pull it through once or twice. I just don't see the need to do it every filament change. Sometimes I'll do it if I'm going from a dark filament to a light filament. That way it clears out all the dark filament real well and I just get the nice light filament coming through. But for the most part, I don't really worry about it. I always pay attention when I first feed filament through, which we'll do here real quick. Now the other nozzle, I told you I managed to wear the point of it flat, which is what has done it. But you got to realize that nozzle's probably close to 10 months old, anywhere from 8 to 10 months old, and I've printed a lot since then, since I put that nozzle on. So I think it's done a pretty good job surviving. Now I'm going to load the filament just like I told you my little trick is, where I take it and just stick it in here and put some pressure down on it, and then you just start spinning the wheel and it'll grab it. Sometimes you might have to fiddle around with it a little, but it works. And then you just keep feeding it in. It takes it a second, then all of a sudden, there you go. See how we're getting a nice straight feed? And let me have it feed itself. Extruder. Let's let it put out about 20 or so. See how it's just feeding straight down, nice on its own. Now, of course, it's tipping over because of the filament around it. But if I was to clip that off, it comes out fairly nice and straight. And that's the way it's supposed to come out. Almost straight down. It should not curl up at the end, because if it starts curling up at the end, that either means you have a clog, or like I had on that one, where the hot end was actually smashed. So there we go. So we discovered I needed to replace my nozzle because it was damaged, but we tried to clean it first. So we've got a new nozzle on it, so we're good to go. Alright guys, well I did look up the nozzles that I currently have on the Robo R1 3D Plus printer, and they are a brass plated wear resistant nozzle. So they're not actually hardened nozzles. I did order a set of hardened nozzles for it, so when this one wears out, I'll replace it with a hardened nozzle. So that explains why when it did the auto leveling that it did eventually smash the tip down. It eventually did wind up clogging itself so it wouldn't print properly. Alright guys, so if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, have a great day.